600 hardened federal inmates may have been released from prison because of the threat of the coronavirus. But the Liberals won't say who they are, what they've done, or how they were selected for this possible COVID parole. The feds are letting hardened criminals out of federal prisons, in part because of the threat of the coronavirus pandemic, as we've previously reported. I mean, just look at this in the Toronto Sun. These aren't nice guys. Hamilton man who murdered family in 76 gets COVID-19 medical leave. Maniac Joe Rallo slaughtered his wife and 2 children in 1976. Now, thanks to COVID-19, the Hamilton triple killer has been granted medical leave from a Sudbury halfway house. According to media reports, the Parole Board of Canada decided last week that for the next 90 days, 77-year-old Rallo can live full-time in a home he shares with his girlfriend. He had been splitting his week between a halfway house and his girlfriend's apartment. For now, it's the apartment full-time. The murders were among the most heinous in Canadian history. Rallo, 33 at the time, was a Hamilton City supervisor when sometime late on August 16th or August 17th, 1976, he murdered his wife Sandra, 29, their son Jason, just 6, and daughter Stephanie, 5, at their Hamilton Mountain home. The nebbish Rallo told detectives his wife was having an affair with a local lawyer who was the real killer, but it was Rallo who was carrying on an affair with a coworker. He has maintained his innocence, of course he has. His wife's family is still waiting to learn where Rallo dumped the body of his son. Like I said, not nice guys are being released because of the coronavirus. But despite laws forcing the Liberals to answer and order paper inquiry on this topic, the feds won't say who's being released, how they're being selected for what I would call coronavirus parole, and the feds won't say if the prisoners being released are rapists, murderers, or other violent maniacs like the aforementioned Joe Rallo. Now, today's information comes to us by way of an order paper question asked by Conservative MP John Nader of Perth Wellington. Nader asked, with regard to inmates released early from federal correction institutions as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, what is the total number of inmates who were released early? What is the breakdown by institution, length of sentence, and how many of the inmates released early were serving sentences related to murder or manslaughter, sex offenses, and other violent crimes? Now, the response from the federal government is especially vague, except for the overall number of federal inmates receiving possible corona parole for their safety, not yours, buried at the end of a mostly empty but really wordy response. Just look at this. Since the beginning of March 2020, the federal custody population has declined by almost 600. This reduction is the result of few admissions from the provinces and territories, coupled with continued safe releases into the community. So, 600 federal inmates have received some form of possible corona parole, but we really can't be sure because the return also says that it's not possible to provide a number of offenders who've been released solely due to COVID-19. So I guess 600 releases were accelerated because of COVID-19. But Nader wanted to know, and so do I, and I think you do too, how these inmates are being selected to be set free, what the criteria is for the release. Well, the government doesn't answer, really. Look at this. Every effort is being made to put forward recommendations to the Parole Board of Canada that keep our community safe. Correctional Service Canada and Parole Board of Canada continue to consider eligible inmates for release in accordance with the law. COVID-19 and other health-related issues are only one of the many considerations taken into account when releasing offenders into the community. No inmate has been released into the community that did not meet the established requirements or had the appropriate risk assessment undertaken. But again, the feds never tell us what the requirements are or what that risk assessment really looks like. It goes on. Correctional Service Canada has been reviewing eligible nonviolent low-risk inmates for consideration, by the parole board as noted by the Parole Board of Canada on their website. They will consider the offender's health or health risk posed by the COVID-19 pandemic as a relevant part of the risk assessment, along with other information on the file. So they admit they do consider the health of the offender and the threat of the coronavirus to the offender in the parole process. And nonviolent, well, that's not exactly how I would describe Joe Rallo, two-time child butcher, family annihilator, but he's free because of the coronavirus. And what part of the country is being flooded with violent offenders as prison doors are swung open to protect convicted criminals from the Wuhan flu? Oh, I don't know. I guess just communities, whatever that means. Look at this. We are engaging with community partners on an ongoing basis to ensure the offenders on conditional release have a safe, secure, and supportive environment to which they can return. This is an important part of any safe and successful release into the community. Well, as long as the offenders are safe from us, I guess. And the government, well, they never say how many of these paroled offenders are rapists, murderers, child abusers, wife beaters, and otherwise violent offenders like the aforementioned Joe Rallo. I can tell you, Sudbury has Joe Rallo now, and if that guy can be released into the community because of the coronavirus, the feds will release anybody, and maybe even into your community. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. The coronavirus pandemic has really revealed the government's priorities, and not just the federal government, but all governments. While provincial and federal inmates are being released, normal citizens are being fined, sometimes up to $880 for just doing normal, completely safe things. But we're helping those people fight back. And if you want to help us help them and to see all of our cases, please go to fightthefines.com.